Carolinians in Congress. Join David Parker to discuss the issues facing North Carolina, the role of Congress, and David's commitment to loving his neighbor.
Good morning. It's David Parker. I'm candidate for Congress in North Carolina's 10th District, and we've got an interesting show for you this morning featuring our guest, Cheri Beasley. She is the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, which means that not only does she hear the most important cases involving precedent, which means setting standards for cases in North Carolina, but she also is the head of the court system. So we're going to talk a little bit with her about what the court does and what the reaction has been to this COVID virus. May chat a little bit about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG, and sort of see where the conversation takes us. As you know, these conversations tend to be somewhat organic. I have some questions laid out, but I never know exactly where things are going to go, and that's been part of the fun of doing this. I am struck, and always have been as a lawyer, by the balancing that's required from that Old Testament passage, Micah 6:8, which asks, what's required of you but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God? And there's such a balancing act for members of the judiciary, and I think really for all people, not just believers, but for all people in our society. And I'm particularly struck by the fact that in this world that we live in now, we really do need to be paying attention to the message which for believers like myself is that gospel message of loving your neighbor as yourself. That is part of the great commandment. Love the Lord with your body, mind, and spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when we look out at our neighbors and we see folks that have not been treated equally and have not been given all of the opportunities just because of, for instance, the color of their skin or their gender, then we take particular note of the fact that those folks' lives matter. So whether it's Black Lives Matter or it's Women's Lives Matter, folks that have historically seen challenges. You know, in this country, women's average wages about 77 cents on the dollar compared to men. And when we look at our communities of color, the impact of the COVID virus on communities of color has just been devastating and really out of all kilter. I will say this, we're expecting our call coming in at about 11:40. I do want to pass my love and my concern for the President of these United States. We Democrats have called for compassion, and this is the time for Democrats to show compassion. We Democrats have called for loving your neighbor as yourself, and Donald Trump is our neighbor, and he is to be loved, and prayers for his safety, his health, and his well-being, not just as president, but also as a person, are appropriate to offer up. And I certainly offer those prayers up in my daily devotionals. So we need to not just talk the talk, we need to walk the walk. And that's a lot of what America is about. A lot of our values come straight out of the Beatitudes. For those of us that, among our listeners that are not Christian, the Beatitudes are part of the sermon that Jesus gave, and it really is a wonderful guide of thinking about other people. Like, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers. All of the people that sometimes we tend to overlook in this era of, frankly, bullying and trying to exercise the upper hand over those among us who are the meek, are the peacemakers. So there is a message here. I have made no secret of the fact that I believe that my faith should steer and does steer what I do as a candidate for Congress, what I do as a lawyer, what I hopefully do as a father and a family man. I believe I'm looking at Nakia, who knows all things. She controls the board, controls my life for 30 minutes, and she tells us that we have Chief Justice Cheri Beasley on the phone. Justice Beasley, are you with us?
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning to you. I cannot tell you I feel a thrill go through my body to have the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina on the phone with us this morning here in little old Iredell County, and we welcome you to this show.
It's a thrill for me to be here. Thanks, David.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to for folks that don't know you, and they really should, because you have made a career of finding justice in situations, and I was just talking before you came on the phone about the balancing act of Micah 6:8, with which I know you are well acquainted of what is required of you, but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. But I do want to tell folks about you a little bit without you having to chat about it. You were a district court judge, meaning that you were down in the judicial trenches dealing with custody cases and small commercial matters, personal injury cases every now and again, just all sorts of work in addition to doing criminal court for everything from DWIs to petty larcenies. You did several years, I believe, was it 4 years, on the North Carolina Court of Appeals?
That's correct.
And then after that, in 2012, when I was working with you and with your race, you won for Supreme Court in 2012 and have been Chief Justice in March of 2019. Is that you? Do I have the right person?
That's me. Yeah.
Well, the only fly in the remarkable ointment of your career is this Duke thing.
Hold that against me.
I will try hard not to. We could talk about Coach K and Old Roy for hours, but we'll focus on justice. If you would, tell these good people that are listening. We have quite a few people that listen to this show. Tell folks what the North Carolina Supreme Court does and how that's different from the U.S. Supreme Court that's been in the news so much lately.
Well, the Supreme Court, the North Carolina Supreme Court, is a part of our state court system. So we have district courts and superior courts all over the state. We have a North Carolina Court of Appeals, and the trial court cases can be appealed to the North Carolina Court of Appeals, and then those cases can be appealed to the Supreme Court of North Carolina. So the Supreme Court of North Carolina is the court of last resort for all issues around the state constitution.
Now, what does last resort mean? Does that mean if you're truly desperate, you go there, or what does that mean?
It means that if you appeal to the Supreme Court and there's a state court issue, and if you wish to appeal any further, like to the Supreme Court of the United States, you cannot do that.
I see.
You can only appeal to the United States Supreme Court if there are federal issues involved.
I see. Well, I've been a lawyer for 41 years, and I'm still learning. So I appreciate the civics lesson. Talk a little bit, if you would, because we don't have, unfortunately, but so much time. But talk a little bit about the impact of the COVID virus on the court system in general. I know as a lawyer, and my son Cheri and I, whom I think you know, practice law together here in Statesville and have for some years, and we've been impacted by it. But talk a little bit about the virus and how we're trying to get back into the business of holding court.
Well, the Chief Justice leads the Supreme Court of North Carolina, and there are 7 justices there. And then she also leads the entire judicial branch of government. So there are courts all over the state, the district courts, the superior courts, the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court. All of those courts are under the judicial branch. And so the Chief Justice leads the entire branch. We have more than 300 court facilities across the state. And so it really has been my responsibility to issue orders, to make sure that we are being as safe as possible on the one hand, while also continuing to hear as many cases as we can safely do so. And so we have been doing that. I have issued orders on public safety measures to be taken around wearing masks. We have halted jury trials, but I'm really excited about the fact that we have I asked for all of the senior resident Superior Court judges to send me plans to show how that they could resume jury trials safely. And so we have received those plans, and so we're very hopeful that we can resume jury trials across the state.
Yes.
But it's, the court system has been impacted like every other aspect of our society. People have been greatly challenged around this pandemic.
Yes, Chief Judge Crosswhite here, Joe Crosswhite, whom I know you know, has been a very good judge for this county, and I say that knowingly as a Democrat because he is a Republican judge, but I think he's been a fine example of what conscientious judicial thinking can do for the court system, and I appreciate the role that he has played here. And that I also want to say this to you. It's pretty clear to those of us on the ground that deal in the court system that you are in the district courts, because I think you have an appreciation, and this is something that voters should know. I think you have an appreciation of what it's like on the ground in the court system and how these rulings that come down from on high actually impact people down here in the legal trenches. So I want to say on behalf of the practicing bar that we appreciate your conscientiousness in setting up these standards.
Well, it's been really important. I hope that my district court experience has been helpful in that way. But I'm so glad that you mentioned Judge Crosswhite, because you're right. And I don't really think that partisan politics ought to have a role in how we do our work. I mean, I'm sure Judge Crosswhite doesn't say, as cases come before him, let's see, now do I dispense Republican justice or Democratic justice? He is a good judge, period. And he's not just a good leader in Iredell County, but he has been a good leader across the state of North Carolina. And I'm very thankful for his service and for his friendship.
Well, and I realize that as a judge, you cannot, as a sitting judge, you can't comment on partisan matters, nor am I going to ask you. But I will make this comment, and I have known your opponent since law school. He was a year behind me at Carolina Law School, so I know him as Paul rather than Mr. Justice. But I really see partisanship as a challenge to a truly independent judiciary. I have found as a lawyer in those very rare cases, and I had one come up about 20 years ago where the judge just told me point blank that my being a Democrat biased him against the position of my client, and he was removed from that case as a result. But partisanship and forecasting of results just has absolutely no place with an independent judiciary, and you can comment on that or not as you see fit.
Well, I'm glad you said that, but I'm also glad that the judge, that for whatever reason he believed that he couldn't rule fairly on the case, recused himself. So that was the responsible thing to do.
No, he was actually removed by another court. It was a difficult situation, to say the least. But yeah, at least he was honest enough to say that to me, which I appreciated.
But partisan, I mean, this is my 5th election, and it's my first partisan election. I've run 2 local elections in Cumberland County, and this is my 3rd statewide election, and this is my first partisan election. And as I speak with the voters around the state, they don't really like the partisan piece. They really believe that judges should not be partisan, and they understand the fact that our work is nonpartisan, whether we have a partisan label or not. And so I very much embrace that. I just, there are a lot of cases that receive some publicity from the Supreme Court, U.S. State Supreme Court, that people take interest in, and people perceive that there is some sort of partisanship at play, but there really is not. And you asked earlier about how the work that we do relates to the U.S. Supreme Court. You know, I know that, you know, we are all aware that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg just passed away, and actually she was in Raleigh about a year ago.
Speaking at Meredith, as I recall.
She was speaking at Meredith, that's right. And then that evening she met with a lot of Meredith College alumni and other community folks. There were probably 300 or 400 people in the audience, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Now, you're putting an AE on the end of alumni tells me that you went to Duke. You just blew it.
Well, actually, I went to a women's college. I went to Douglas College of Rutgers University, so I am an alumna.
I see.
So yes, I yeah. But it was a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I think the fact that she really helped lawyers and non-lawyers appreciate the work of the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, the fact that much later in life, she was known as Notorious RBG. I think she helped all of us to really appreciate not just the work of the Supreme Court of the United States, but the role and the importance of state Supreme Courts as well. And so,
well, I see on your website, which, by the way, folks, is Chief Justice Beasley, and Beasley is BEASLEY.com, ChiefJusticeBeasley.com. I see a picture of you with a Ginsburg collar on.
Actually, that collar was given to me by a friend, and he gave it to me the morning of my investiture. So it's not a dissent collar or a majority collar. It was just a lovely ceremonial collar.
Yes,
which lots of women justices wear.
It is beautiful.
But there's also a picture on my social media of Justice Ginsburg and me the night of that Meredith event, and we were talking about the time before. When she came to North Carolina, and she remembered that she was here to celebrate women chief justices. And all those years later, she remembered that there were 13 at the time. And so she was pleased when I told her that there are now 18. So it was really just precious meeting her. And, of course, now that we've lost her, it's even more precious.
Yes, I think that as a symbol of working for justice, she really is one of the more important jurists in our history. Yes.
Yeah. Although I've met Justice Scalia as well, and I love the fact that they shared a friendship. He was wonderful, funny, of course, very intelligent, and I appreciated meeting him twice as well. So that we've just had, you know, a remarkable Supreme Court of the United States.
Yes, we have, and you raise a very good point. And I don't think that people understand this. The friendship between Ginsburg and Scalia, both of whom, of course, now have passed, is a wonderful reminder of the fact that we are called to civility in our society. I mean, you can disagree with people. You can have different partisan viewpoints. And yet you can engage in civil conversation. Obviously, I'm running for Congress, and we've got so much partisanship in Congress that it's almost impossible to get anything done. I mean, it seems as though the influence of money in politics is so savage. My opponent has raised $2.5 million. All but a small amount of which, I think less than 10%, has come from individuals inside this congressional district. And I do worry about the presence of money in politics and its corrupting influence. I don't know, it seems to drive us into more partisanship. And for those folks that are running every 2 years, I believe your term is an 8-year term, thank heavens. But for those that run every 2 years, I mean, they get up in the morning, it seems as though all they do is think about how to get reelected.
And raising money. And
raising money.
And you're right. I mean, the terms for the members of the Supreme Court are longer, but the general public is very concerned about the fact that our races are becoming more and more expensive. Lay people do not like when judges call to ask for campaign contributions, and it makes them uncomfortable, and I understand that. So, this is the system we have for right now, but we have to continue the dialogue about how best to go forward with judicial selection in a way that the that the members of the public are comfortable, as well as judicial candidates.
Absolutely. One of my good friends from college days is Sam J. Irvin the fourth, whom I know as Jimmy, and I know that he has enjoyed serving on the Supreme Court with you and really brings a nonpartisan viewpoint to everything that he does, notwithstanding the fact that his grandfather was a United States Senator and a Democrat. And that kind of, people say bipartisan, and I really think in so many ways that we just ought to get away from this partisanship. It doesn't do any good. I mean, I certainly have beliefs that I hold firmly, and I agree with a great deal of what the Democratic Party has as its platform, not every jot and tittle of it, but a great deal of it. We've got a little bit of time left, and I want to ask you the forecast question coming from Micah 6:8, where the scriptural passage is, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God? How do you, as a jurist, balance justice, mercy, and humility? We've got about 2 minutes.
Well, it is a balance. I think it's always really important to appreciate the fact that when people come to the court, they never come for a good reason. They are coming because they're hurting. That's whether they're an individual or corporation. There's something not right. And they're looking for an arbiter, a judge, to be fair and impartial in their cases. And even in the worst cases, we really have to appreciate the fact that we can see the humanity in everybody, that people can find themselves in the worst circumstances, but we all really do have the same hopes and dreams and fears and joys and cares and pain, for our families, our communities, and we really do want the best, even if we find ourselves in horrible situations. So I think we can do justice in a way that still acknowledges people's humanity, even when there is punishment involved. I think it's important not to diminish the personhood of those who come before us.
Yes.
So, I do think that is scriptural. I think that's who we are called to be, and I think that is the walking humbly.
Yes, I think so. That balance is certainly not an easy one to achieve. We've got another minute or so, and Madam Chief Justice, I've talked about your website, but is there something that you'd like to say to these good people? Your listeners are probably the most politically tuned in and sophisticated folks here in Iredell County, and they pay rapt attention to these dialogues, and I'd like to hear if you've got anything to say to these good people in closing.
Well, I'm on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I've spent the last year and a half as Chief Justice really trying to instill trust and confidence in our courts. People have been skeptical, and the prior Chief Justice commissioned a study, and we know that most North Carolinians have no trust and confidence in our courts. And so it's important to do that. It's important to, if we had more time, I'd literally go through the whole programs that we have in our courts. But I will tell you, we do have a Faith and Justice Alliance, which will convene tomorrow. And if you just Google North Carolina Faith and Justice, you can be a part of the alliance. But it's just been really important for us to create lots of programs and opportunities for people to figure out how to navigate through the system for themselves.
Well, thank you so much, Chief Justice Beasley at chiefjusticebeasley.com. This is David Parker at voteparker.com. I've enjoyed being with you. I'm running for Congress. Thank you for your support, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you for listening in. We'll be back every Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Find our campaign at voteparker.com. That's voteparker.com. Please donate and don't forget to vote. This is
I'm still here.
Well, Pops, It's Father's Day. I got you a gift. Hat and tie. But you might want to change up your game a little bit. Happy Father's Day.
No, thank you, son.
What do you mean, no thank you?
That's not my style, Rick. I wear fedoras.
I mean, you did get him the cheapest tie and hat imaginable. It was almost rude that you would get him that stuff. What'd you spend, $16?
You can't say no thank you to a gift.
Sure can.
I'll rock the hat if no one wants it.
At my shop, family comes first and money comes second, depending on who you ask. But the best part, you never know what's going to come through that door. This is Pawn Stars. So what do we got here? Salvador Dali.
Yes, sir. Original, signed by Salvador Dali himself.
Okay. He was an uber famous artist, literally grew his mustache out and waxed it all the way out to like here, you know, and made big curls with it, dressed really, really super weird. He was a freak.
Right? Yeah, no. In the original paperwork when I purchased it, it was a piece that was owned by one of Salvador Dali's friends himself. I'm hoping to get $8,000. I would probably take somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 or $4,000 for the painting.
It's cool. You know anything about it?
It's an original signed by Salvador Dali. I think it's the Divine Comedy series.
Do you know what the Divine Comedy is about?
Not a lot.
Basically, it's Dante's march through heaven, hell, and purgatory. So everyone's heard of Dante's Inferno. Okay?
Right.
That was part of the Divine Comedy. There was the Inferno, which was hell. And then there was Paradiso, paradise, and then there was purgatory. Okay. And so I'm assuming, since this looks like an angel, this is like the heaven part. Salvador Dali is the most famous surrealist to ever live. He's really known for his melting clocks, and some of his pieces have gone for millions. If you collect art, this is one of the things you should have. You might have to take a better look.
Yeah.
Literally, you have an angel sticking her finger in the mouth of a rhinoceros.
Looks like to me.
To me, it's really weird that we have his autograph in red. Generally, when you sign like a lithograph or a woodblock print, something like this, it's done in pencil. So, how much are you looking to get out of it?
You know, something you can make a few dollars, maybe 8,000.
Tell you the truth, it sounds awfully high.
Really?
It does. But I would love to buy it. Let me have someone take a look at it. Let's make sure everything is legit, and figure out a price, okay?
Okay, all righty. Yeah, I'm a little nervous. He said the signature was red, and that raised the red flag for him. So I'm kind of a little anxious because, if I paid that kind of money for this and it's not real, I'm really going to be upset.
So what do we got here?
I've got